Are we live?
Yes, Sarah, it's over with you.
Okay. Good morning. My name's Sarah Creamer. I'm Executive Director of Strategy and Planning for the Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland Clinical Commissioning Groups, who are responsible for the consultation on our acute reconfiguration proposals in LLR. I'd like to welcome you this morning to this event in which we will describe our proposals to reconfigure hospitals in Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland and answer your questions. We're really pleased and excited to be here this morning to talk to you about this £450 million plans. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to improve our hospitals for the people of Leicester, to make them fit for purpose and allow our clinicians to deliver modern medical services going into the future. The main changes we're going to focus on, the consultation focuses on, is moving services from the general site in Leicester, predominantly to the Leicester Royal Infirmary and Glenfield, and retaining a community campus at the general. We have exciting plans around a dedicated children's hospital, consolidation of maternity services, a new treatment centre, ITU expansions, and increase in beds to manage our future demand. So the format this morning will be, we will play a video that explains our proposals. We will then take questions, and you can either ask questions by putting your virtual hand up, or you can add your questions to the chat box. And to support in answering questions, I have a number of colleagues with me this morning from Universities Hospitals of Leicester. I've got Mark Whiteman, who's the Director of Strategy and Communications. I've got John Jameson, who's Consultant Surgeon and Deputy Medical Director. Elaine Broughton, who's Head of Midwifery and Nursing, and Nikki Topham, who is our Reconfiguration Director. So I think we'll start off by playing the video. So Carl, over to you, please.
We want to spend £450 million to improve acute hospital and maternity services in Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. This means the services provided at the Leicester Royal Infirmary, Glenfield Hospital and the General Hospital. We want to see improved patient care, better patient outcomes and have staff working in the best place to make this happen. Most of all, we want to deliver hospital healthcare that is fit for the future. This is your chance to find out more about what is being proposed and to have your say. This will help your local NHS understand what the changes would mean for you and help us make a final decision.
What we don't want is a health service that's designed only by the people who work in it. It's got to be designed by the people who experience it and use those services.
The proposals include 2 super intensive care units, one at Leicester Royal and one at Glenfield Hospital, with 100 beds in total. That's almost double the current number. Modernised wards, operating theatres and imaging facilities. The first dedicated single-site children's hospital in the East Midlands, based at the Royal. And a new maternity hospital. Currently, there are 2 units on different sites, the General and the Royal.
Obviously, having 2 sites means that sometimes it's spread too thinly. When we're really busy, when we haven't got enough rooms or when we haven't got enough staff to look after the women, especially in labour, women need one-to-one care. We have to transfer activity from one site to another. So we would envisage that with a new larger hospital where we pool the staff together, that likelihood would happen less often. The beauty of it is that they're going to be in one unit, and if there is an emergency situation, they can very quickly have access to the obstetricians and the neonatologist.
Under our proposals, Glenfield Hospital will become a major planned care treatment centre with welcome centres to put you at ease and help you find your way around the hospital. These changes would enable us to separate emergency care and planned operations. This would help prevent treatment being delayed or cancelled when the emergency services are busy. More than 100,000 day case procedures and around 600,000 follow-up appointments take place every year at the city's hospitals. The move will free up capacity at the Leicester Royal Infirmary and help ease issues of access and parking there.
Let's take a patient, for example, who's having a planned daycare surgical procedure. They will receive their preoperative workup on this site, so all the tests and things they need doing before their operation. They will have also been seen in clinic on this site, have the decision made that they need an operation in the first place. Then they'll come to this site, they'll have their operation and go home the same day. And any follow-up that's necessary after that will also be provided on this site.
Leicester General Hospital will become a community health campus. It would include facilities such as the Diabetes Centre of Excellence, a dedicated imaging hub to help GPs diagnose patients' conditions quicker, and a stroke recovery service with inpatient beds. It would potentially be home to a midwifery-led unit, which will be relocated from St Mary's in Melton Mowbray. This will make it accessible to more people and provide a better and safer experience for mums. Today's modern medicine and technology means many patients don't always need to stay in hospital to get well.
Over the last 30 years, the NHS has cut its beds by about 50%, which feels counterintuitive looking at the population growth. But when you take into consideration the change in medical practice over 30 years, so hip replacements used to come in and be in hospital for over a week. They're now staying in hospital for around 2 days. We've got sort of robotic surgery now and keyhole surgery, which means patients don't stay in hospital as long. And we used to prescribe bed rest for patients. We don't do that anymore either.
And for some conditions, you can be cared for at home or where you live.
If you need to be in hospital, so you need treatment or you need investigations that can't be done in the community, or, for instance, you're acutely unwell and you need the investigations doing straight away, hospital is the right place for patients. But there's certainly patients where their medical treatment can happen at home, and it's much nicer for the patient if you can have all the care investigations done in your own surroundings, done at local community hospitals with doctors, nurses coming in that will be the same faces that they see on a daily basis. It's about having safe care, but in the best way for the patient, the most suitable way.
At the moment, our hospitals and our staff, while doing their best, are spread too thinly, trying to provide 21st century services in outdated buildings with limited resources and opportunities for change. We want to achieve a service based on our future healthcare needs, not the legacy of the past.
Leicester's hospitals merged in 2000, and whilst that merger was very successful, it left one issue unresolved. And that was that many of our clinical services, the location of those clinical services is more a product of accident than design. They're split across more than one site. Our staff are spread thinly and our equipment isn't always in the right place. And that can lead to difficulties with staffing our services in the way that we would want to do optimally. I'm really excited by these changes. I think that this is a once-in-a-generation chance to provide care in Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland that will be state-of-the-art, will give patients a much improved patient experience, give them access to modern medicines, modern treatments in modern buildings. And I'm really excited by this, and I hope that people will be when they see the plans of what we're planning to try and do for Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland.
You can see the proposals on our website and fill in a questionnaire to give us your views.
Thank you. Right, so we're into the question and answer session part now. So you can either raise your hand to ask a question by using the little hand icon on MS Teams bar, or you can add a question to the chat box. So has anybody got a question that they would like to ask? So do we have any questions in the chat?
Yes, Sarah, we had some questions that were sent to us in advance. So one of the questions that we've got is, some people are going around giving out flyers and posters saying that the plans are just part of a fire sale to balance the NHS books, and that we haven't properly thought about the population and what they'll need in the future. Is this true?
So I think I'll hand over to Mark to start that question, and then he might want to ask one of his clinical colleagues to describe the work that we did to clinically assure the proposals. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Sarah, and good morning for people who are watching. Happy Halloween. Is it a fire sale? No, absolutely not. Why do I say that? Well, I'm hoping I'll bring John Jameson, one of our clinicians, in later. But essentially, the whole point of the reconfiguration is to sort out something that, frankly, we should have sorted out 20 years ago, but we didn't have the cash. And that is essentially that when the three hospitals merged to become one trust in the year 2000, the merger in itself was quite successful, but we never really sorted out the clinical configuration, and such that, for example, our brilliant cardiac service was at the Glenfield Hospital. Our equally brilliant vascular service was at the Royal Infirmary, 1.5 miles separate, and yet most of the public would understand cardiovascular disease of the heart or the arteries or the venous system, and yet those two services were separate. So that speaks to the idea that actually our current clinical configuration is more an accident of history rather than a kind of a design. And that's the essential thing we're trying to sort out. Now, that means that sounds a little bit kind of clinical and archaic, but what it essentially boils down to is, at the moment, and patients and the public will probably recognise this, when we're running hot on emergency care, so when our emergency department is really busy and we're admitting lots of people, then quite often the elective care, so things like non-urgent but important hip and knee operations, cataract operations, those kind of things that aren't life-saving but life-changing for patients, when we're really busy with emergencies, they get cancelled because we either don't have the beds, we don't have the beds in the right place, we don't have access to intensive care for people post-operatively. All those things need sorting out, and that is essentially the driver to the reconfiguration. So it's not a fire sale. I think it's more important than that, really. It's actually, we need to get our hospitals into a state where we can provide proper medicine, proper surgery that's fit for the 21st century. Yes, there is a financial upside to this. So at the moment, we're running 3 intensive care units. We have even done stuff like 3 canteens. All of that duplication and triplication of services makes us really expensive to run and really hard to staff because our staff is spread too thinly. So there is a financial upside, but it's not the driver to it, and it certainly isn't a fire sale. So anybody who puts a leaflet through your letterbox saying that, I'd push it back in their hands if I were you. JJ, anything to add on that?
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. I mean, yeah, absolutely. This is clinically driven. This reconfiguration. We've gone out to all our clinicians in UHL through our clinical management groups and asked them what they think their service should look like in the future. What it looks like now, what it should look like in the future. We've asked them to build the plans up from the bottom up. And we did that right at the start of this, and we've recently reaffirmed that this is the right direction. These are all the right things to be doing. And in addition to that, these proposals have been run past the Regional Clinical Senate, which is a multidisciplinary body of clinicians and with lay representation, who scrutinised our plans in great detail. And there was a ringing endorsement from that group that this is the right thing to be doing. So this is clearly, in my mind, clearly clinically driven, and is a great opportunity. I mean, the other thing I would add, I've been a consultant in Leicester since 1996. I was appointed at the Glenfield initially when there were 3 separate trusts. And the clinicians at that stage recognised that we did not have the setup right. And we've been talking about trying to fix this, as Mark said, for many, many years. And now we've got the opportunity to do this. And I think the other thing to say, the clinicians I work with, because we, not to put too fine a point on, we've got to be providing the best quality services for our patients that we can on a day-to-day basis. So why would we set ourselves up with a setup that actually stops us doing that? These proposals will make it much patient care much better and make it much easier for us to provide that care as clinicians.
Thank you, John. Just before we move off this topic, Mark, quite a few people have also suggested that if we do move services from the general and then use that site for housing, what happens in 5, 20, 30 years' time when we might need additional space for services? Will we run out of space or not? I wondered if you could comment on that, please.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So the first thing to say is actually, depending on what lens you look at this through, then kind of selling land at the general hospital for housing, including key worker housing and affordable housing, is either a good thing or a bad thing. Personally, I think it's a good thing. If the land isn't being utilised for health services, then we should try and address the housing crisis locally and nationally. And actually, the money that we raise from that will be reinvested in the NHS. But as Sarah says, some stakeholders have said, but aren't you kind of selling off the family silver? And what happens if all your modelling and predictions and plans that you've been doing over the last couple of decades prove to be wrong and you need more estate to build bigger hospitals on? Well, the answer really is we've still got quite a lot of land left, even after the general goes. So despite our big expansion plans at the Glenfield, as an example, where we're going to roughly increase the size of the Glenfield by 1/3 with the creation of the treatment centre, there's still 22 acres, I think, of developable land at the Glenfield Hospital for healthcare purposes. And for those people who don't get what an acre is, which is equivalent to, which is basically me, that's 22 football pitches worth of land that is capable of being developed. So people shouldn't worry about the fact we're going to run out of space. At the same time, if people also want to question, well, would we want to put all services at the Glenfield? As the treatment centre is built, then about half of the patient footfall that currently comes to the Royal Infirmary will move across the Glenfield, and that will also enable us, therefore, to, if we need to, put extra capacity onto the Royal if our plans don't work out. I think that is an infinitesimally small risk, but it's good to have an insurance policy there.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark, for that. So I've got a couple of questions that are quite estates related, Nikki, if I could come to you for those. So the first one is, how are the new buildings and refurbishments going to be protected against water surface flooding, which is a particular risk at the LRI? And what proposals do we have around our carbon footprint and reducing that within our proposals?
Okay, thank you. So just to start with the water surface issue at the Royal, I'm not an engineer and nor am I particularly technical. However, we are aware that the LRI site is a flood risk site, and we will be working very closely with the planners in the City Council in order to make sure that we don't put ourselves at any risk. In order to get planning permission, they will want to see a site drainage survey and strategy as part of the approvals process. So that's something that we are very, very aware of. If you need anything more technical, I'd suggest that I get my technical colleagues to put a technical answer onto the website. With regard to carbon, obviously it's something that's very, very important to everybody at the moment. So the NHS, as you may be aware, have got a strategy to take the hospitals to a carbon neutral position. So we're working very, very closely with the centre to look at how we can do that. Some of our buildings are new buildings and some are refurbishments. So the opportunity to to get towards carbon zero is much better in a new build, and virtually impossible in a refurbished building. So it's something that's very close to our hearts, and we will be working very hard to minimise the carbon footprint that any of these buildings create.
Okay, Nikki, so I think that would be helpful if we could get a technical answer to that put up on the Q&As. Is that all right? So John,
Yes,
can I
of
come
course.
to you, please? There's been a question about how these proposals have changed in light of COVID and our experience from that, and what that might mean about services going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I think it's fair to say that COVID has focused our minds on the infection prevention aspects of the reconfiguration. They were pretty well in our sights to start with, because we recognise that some of our existing estate, especially at the general hospital, because it's old, the ventilation's not good. It's much more the number of side rooms, because of all the Nightingale type wards there, can be improved on. So in terms of COVID, it's focused our minds on those aspects, and we've increased. Well, we think we need to increase the number of side rooms. For example, we're obviously going to be focusing on things like the ventilation and all the things we were going to be doing in any case, about how we separate the various flows of patients and staff and services and goods through the through the hospital. So it's been a salutary reminder that we need to get the IP stuff right, but we were doing that in any case.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that we have discussed with clinicians, you know, what would have been different if these proposals had been in place, and would we want to do anything differently? And overwhelmingly, people have said, just do the proposals, and we would have coped much better. We wouldn't have had to have moved some of our children's heart surgery to Birmingham, for example. We would have had. We wouldn't have had to have closed some of our electives, etc. So there's overwhelming clinical support for these changes. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the overall, sorry, just to follow through on that, Sarah, one of the big things is the overall increase in the number of ICU beds. That's one of the major achievements, I think, of the reconfiguration programme, that they're effectively doubling the amount of ICU capacity, which is which if we'd already had in place, would clearly have helped us through this current crisis. And as you say, it's not just the separation of the elective from the emergency, but it's also the ability to, this will give us the ability to have what you might call a super clean hospital within the Glenfield site, and that would have also been very beneficial if we'd already had it in place.
Yeah, thank you, John. So, Sue, have we got any other questions that were asked before the meeting?
Yes, we have. One really relating to Melton. Lots of places are growing. It isn't fair that people of Melton have access to a gold-plated service that isn't available to people in my area of the county. I thought the NHS was supposed to be equitable.
Okay, so I think that's about the maternity proposals, isn't it?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think in particular it's around our proposals to discuss with the public during this consultation the opportunity to effectively relocate the midwifery-led birthing unit from Melton to the general. I think I'll start with Mark, and then I'm sure Mark will pass over to Elaine as our head of midwifery. Thank you.
Yeah, so as Sarah explains, part of the consultation is that we would like to move the midwifery-led birthing unit currently at St Mary's Hospital in Melton to the general, if that's what the public would like, i.e. When I said the public would like, if they support that proposal. The reason the Melton unit we're struggling with at the moment is it does somewhere between 150 and 180 births a year, so one birth of a baby every 3 days. It's basically underused. Now, that creates a few problems. But I guess the key problem, and this is what was at the heart of the question, is it equitable to have that kind of service? I think the question used the phrase gold plated in one part of our catchment area when other parts don't have it and don't have access to it. And I think that's a very fair question. The NHS has got to be equitable. It's got to serve the needs of the largest part of the population, and that's part of the driver of moving the midwife-led service to the general, is that it's going to be more accessible for more people than it is in Melton. The other part of the question around Melton was that the population is growing, and yes, it is growing. Yeah, it's growing, you know, by about 0.8% a year actually across Leicester, Leicestershire, and Rutland. But even though the population is growing, those women who are giving birth to babies, of which are about 11,000 a year in our area, are still choosing not to use Melton. So I think I characterise the decisions around Melton as difficult, because clearly when you ask members of the public, would they like to have the choice of a midwife-led birthing unit in a market town like Melton, they're going to say yes. But actually whether they choose to exercise that choice when they're giving birth to their babies is a different matter altogether. And it seems that most people don't exercise that choice for pretty understandable reasons, that they want the safety net of an obstetric unit nearby. Elaine Broughton, our head of midwifery, is on the call, and I'm sure she'll be able to explain that in a little bit more detail.
Hello.
Elaine.
Hi. Yes, Mark, you've explained it very eloquently, and that is exactly the reason why we'd propose to move a standalone birth unit more centrally, so that it's more accessible to more people. The way forward with maternity models of care is actually continuity of carers. So the unit in Melton wouldn't in the future be staffed 24 hours anyway, even if we kept it open, because midwives will be looking after teams of women and coming in with their women from the community and delivering them and then taking them home again. So, and that's going to happen all across LLR. So where we put a standalone unit, if women choose to birth in a standalone unit, they won't go in and have a team of midwives waiting for them there. They will go in with their own personal group, one of the members of their own personal team of midwives, and have that continuity. And that is part of Better Birth's proposal and also part of the 10-year plan. And also there is an issue with the beds at St Mary's. Going forward, the 10-year plan is to provide more substantial postnatal care at home by community midwives and a highly skilled set of support workers who will go to women's homes to provide a more robust support package of postnatal care. So, that is the way forward generally, as and it does align with our reconfiguration plans.
Thank you, Elaine. Can I just ask a follow-up to that, which has come up a number of times, which is about the fact that people are concerned that they might lose the community aspect of midwifery in Melton, so the breastfeeding support, that sort of thing. Could you just reassure the public that that won't be the case?
So we have community services all across LLR already, and there's no reason why that would change. We will still be providing the community care over there. We've got lots of, really passionate midwives who really want to support women with the breastfeeding. So we're looking at, currently we have breastfeeding support hubs in Leicester General Hospital, but that, and we want to roll those out into the community, and that is in our plans for the future as well. And we will be training, support staff as well as midwives to be able to support the women, so they can drop in or they can request a home visit and get the support that they need in the comfort of their own home, or be able to drop in and see a professional and get some support.
Thank you. Sue, have we got any further questions?
Yes, we have. What happens if you don't get the support you need through the consultation? Would the 450 million be lost and our hospitals just have to continue as they have been doing?
So can I ask Mark to pick that question up if that's all right? Sorry.
Okay, so if the public don't support the consultation, I suppose there's a couple of things on this. So the first thing is it would be, I think it would be extraordinary if the government and the Treasury changed their mind on this. So they understand that the NHS per se and Leicester's hospitals especially need investment. So I don't think that is a particular risk that they would withdraw the 450 million pounds. I would make another point that this is a consultation, and consultations are defined as asking members of the public and stakeholders what they think of plans. In this case, the plans to invest nearly £500 million in the local NHS. But then it's not a referendum, so it's not a vote, if you see what I mean. So it's not a kind of like tick yes for support and tick no for against. The point of the consultation really is that having spent literally 20 years trying to work out what is the best thing to do for the local NHS, is we think it's the right answer. But we don't have a monopoly on right, and so we go out to consult to see if there's anything we've missed, any ideas that the public come up with that actually might finesse or nuance some of the plans, or is there something that actually is so fundamentally changed that actually we need to rethink? And of those things I've just rattled off, I think there's probably a slim chance that we've missed something so fundamental. So this is more about just checking our plans with the public to say, in the context of everything that you know that's going on, does this kind of make sense to you? And that's the whole point of the consultation, really.
Thank you, Mark. Sue, any further questions?
Yeah, we have. This one is relating to Leicester General Hospital. If it's no longer going to be an acute hospital, does this mean really that the plans are eventually to close the site?
Okay, so shall I just try and take that one to start off with, and then if UHL colleagues want to add to it, then they can. So the proposals at the moment are to retain services, some services on the general site, so such as the diabetes centre, the diagnostic centre that's already there, and some and then to enhance that with some primary care, urgent care, outpatient type services, should that be supported through the consultation that we're currently in. The rest of the site, as set out in the pre-consultation business case, does say that it would probably be offered for housing, which is currently the NHS policy for land that's no longer required. So to answer the question, no, the site won't completely close. There will be some services still delivered there, but some of the site would be offered up for housing. I don't know whether anybody wanted to add anything else to that.
Yeah, can I just add to that, Sarah? I see the general hospital site with the retained activity that you've just described in there has been vital, actually. I mean, especially the GP hub urgent care centre type thing is exactly what we need for that part of the city. And the other thing to draw our attention there is the diabetes centre of excellence. That's going to actually expand, and we're going to be building on our ability to do research and innovation. I mean, it's probably worth mentioning that we have been one of the major contributors as a trust and a healthcare community to the ongoing research around COVID, and we've also recently been awarded research status in terms of helping with new drugs, taking all that work away from all the traditional big centres. So we need to absolutely to build on all that, and that relies on that what we're retaining on the Leicester General side.
Yeah. Thank you, John, for that. So Sue, is that the end of the questions?
We've just got one more. It's more related now to the treatment centre at Glenfield, just in terms of why the planned procedures need to be there. Couldn't they be split across 2 sites? And then just a supplementary on that, do we think that it'll actually reduce waiting times?
Okay, so can I start off with John for a clinical perspective on that? Because I think it's about adjacencies, isn't it, John?
Yeah.
And the need to separate elective and non-elective, and then Mark for the waiting times, if that's all right. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key to that is the separation from elective, separation of the elective from the non-elective work, and anytime you've got a competing competition for beds, for ITU space, for theatre space, that the acute stuff, the emergency stuff, always takes priority, because that's that's often more life-threatening. So the more we can separate elective from emergency work, and not just in terms of treatment, but also in terms of diagnostics, and that diagnostic hub at the General gives us an opportunity to do that, the better. And the other point that I made before about the being able to separate, it's a bit crude to describe as a clean and a dirty hospital, but I think people will understand what I mean by that. So if we can have elective care in a site that's effectively clean and free from all sorts of infectious problems, that's clearly the right thing to be doing. And to do that on both sites is not really possible.
Thank you, John. And just Mark on the final part of that question.
So this was around, will it improve waiting times and I suppose efficiency? I mean, yes, absolutely. So if you think about the pathway at the moment, so a patient's journey through our hospitals at the moment, they may have their first outpatient appointment at the Leicester General Hospital. They may have kind of a CT or an MRI or a further bit of diagnostic work, and that will be at the Royal Infirmary. And then their procedure, their operation, could be at any one of the 3 sites. So we kind of ping patients around the hospitals on a routine basis, not because we want to, but because that's just the way we're configured at the moment. The whole point of the treatment centre is to kind of create something resembling a one-stop shop where you can have your outpatient appointment, your diagnostics, and even your procedure on the same day. I think that will be remarkable for our patients, especially actually those who are travelling from further afield, because rather than making 3 or 4 journeys to complete their kind of patient pathway, they can do it in 1 or perhaps 2. So that's really significant. And yes, it will help us tackle our waiting lists, because waiting lists are contingent on 2 things essentially: the level of demand and how efficient we are at tackling that demand. At the moment, we know that demand is growing and we are inefficient, not because we aren't trying hard, but because our estate is actually working against us, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a tremendous improvement that patients will see the real benefits of.
Thank you. So I think that's the end of the questions, Sue, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Sarah, yes.
Okay. So I can't see any more hands raised, and we haven't got any more questions in the chat. So I think I propose to finish at this point. I just want to say a couple of things in terms of there's plenty of opportunities still to take part in the consultation, and the information is available on our Better Hospitals of Leicester website. A number of events like this are still planned, and the questionnaire is also on that website. So I'd encourage people to complete the questionnaire. And it just leaves me to thank the technical team today, the panel today, and for those patients and the public that have joined us today. So thank you very much for listening to our exciting plans and proposals, and goodbye.